This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. In-depth conversations with people who are making a difference in the lives of others here and around the world. Culture is at the heart of who you are. Know your culture, find yourself on Open Door with Vince Robinson.
Grand Dawning, Great Rising, Cleveland, Ohio, and the rest of planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest this morning is LaToya Kent. She's a full-time artist, musician, doula, and healer with over 25 years of experience. Her career started in her teen years in Cleveland. She completed 3 yoga programs and is one of the first certified yoga teachers of color in Cleveland. She's an advocate for natural birth and has attended close to 100 natural births. She works with women of all ages and backgrounds, instilling wholeness of body, mind, and spirit. She's also a mindfulness teacher in the public school system of Cleveland, and she's developed a program entitled Mindfulness for All that encompasses teaching grades from kindergarten through 8th grade. She's performed her music throughout the United States and is internationally known as a solo artist, and with her current collective, Mourning A BLKstar. Her collective had the opportunity to perform at the Kennedy Center, Democracy Now!, the Lincoln Center, and has graced the cover of Wire magazine. She runs Cleveland Tapes, an underground art and music platform, with her longtime collaborator, R.A. Washington. She's a board member of the Panther Foundation, with sponsors and supports musicians and music institutions in Ohio. She surrounded herself with the power of creative outlets to keep her motivated in her mission to share her art. She lives life by example and continues to be inspired and create as the world shifts and changes. I think those are her words that she has most adequately described herself and her mission. Welcome to Open Door with Vince Robinson, LaToya Kent. LaToya, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. How were you feeling as you were hearing all those accolades?
A lot.
Well, I have to tell you, it's a pleasure to connect with you. I have actually seen you in action on stage at the Cleveland Museum of Art. And one of your bandmates is a really good friend of mine, Dr. Will, Bowtie Willie, and all those other good names. He's part of the committee who is going to hand out some money for the Transformative Art Fund, among other things. But again, it is a great pleasure to have this conversation with you. So when I do these programs, generally I start by giving folks an opportunity to talk about their coming up. I can see that your teen years were in Cleveland, so I guess you grew up here.
I did. I grew up in East Cleveland and Cleveland Heights. So I always say I'm from East Cleveland Heights. I went to East Cleveland Public Schools for elementary and junior high, and then I went to Cleveland Heights as for high school.
Okay. All right. So I'm just noticing in your bio, since we're talking about schools, that you are a mindfulness teacher. Tell us what you do as a mindfulness teacher.
So my studies started with yoga in the 90s, like early 90s. And back then there weren't any yoga studios in Cleveland. So it was more so connecting to yoga through VHS tapes. That's how long ago it was. And so I would go to the libraries and I would go to the, self-help and healing sections. And I've discovered yoga. I didn't know anybody that did yoga, or anything connected to that. So it's kind of started with my yoga practice, around, probably around like 95, 96, one of the first yoga studios, like physical brick and mortar yoga studios, opened in Cleveland Heights. It was called the Atma Center. And so I attended there and began to student teach. There weren't any certification programs at that time. So I was there so much that my teacher said, well, I'll start to teach you the practice. And I was a co-teacher. And then I ended up leaving Cleveland to study at another school that had a certification program. But all of all of the education through yoga um, moved into the place of mindfulness. So I started working in schools in Los Angeles in the early 2000s, doing what I considered to be mindfulness work, but it wasn't titled that then. It was just titled, you just were teaching a yoga class. But I always integrated um, asking questions and working with each other, like very much of like a Native American circle um, connective piece. And so I always make sure that we sit together and we talk and we share. I come up with maybe a question. What is kindness? Or how do you feel about your favorite memory? And then each person has the opportunity to work with that. I use sound healing. I use aromatherapy, um, physical art, so drawing, painting, working with our hands, making things. And then we use poetry. It's a lot of different elements. It starts with some breath work. Sometimes it has a little bit of movement. I use a lot of binaural rhythms to create an atmosphere in the classroom, but I also play a lot of jazz music. So a lot of Miles Davis and Alice and John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders, things like that. I'll play in the background while we're working, but mostly understanding the concept of community, helping them to learn what it means to display kindness, but also to move in a space with awareness. Awareness, not just of your own physical body and space, but awareness of others. So we talk a lot about that, but we actually move in a way that exemplifies that technique, I guess you can call it. So I've been working in the Cleveland school system for about, I think, going on 6 years. Somewhere around that time, it started to be called mindfulness. Um, so social emotional learning and mindfulness kind of go hand in hand. And so it moved away from just being yoga, a physical practice, and moving more into like the meditative part and the breath work piece, and then moving that into the other therapies, so sound healing, somatics, um, art therapy. And the title became mindfulness. It started to mingle around in the yoga community and in the self-healing community, or self-help community, excuse me, and the healing community. And so it was a lot easier to transition those pieces together as one thing, because before that it was kind of separated into parts. And so now, under the umbrella of mindfulness, you can do all of those things, and it's like a melting pot of all of those healing arts.
It sounds like a lot, and it sounds like I may have put the cart before the horse. So,
That's okay.
yoga was basically the foundation for everything that came after that. So, I'd just like
Yes.
to talk to you about your yoga practice. I'm familiar with your Seer Ra Hotep. As a matter of fact, I have had him as a guest on this show, and he's a practitioner of Kemetic yoga. But I get the
Yeah.
idea that perhaps what you have as your foundation is something other than that. Can you talk about the yoga that you practice, and if you want to give a name to it, or give us an indication of what folks know it as, please do.
So my first serious practice that I learned from through the Atma Center is Satyananda Yoga. It's from an area of India called Bihar. So it was originally called the Bihar School of Yoga. They work with the body as a seat. So the word asana, which is what most people call postures, are created to work with your nervous system in order for you to eventually have the ability to sit for meditation for extended periods of time. So you're using breath work, you're using the postures, but the end goal is meditation. So I started there. I studied with that school for really from the time I started until now. It's a continued study. But when I first started working with them, they didn't really have a presence in the United States. My teacher had a friend who went to the ashram where this particular yoga started, or the paths, not the yoga started, but the school started. And she was able to Xerox some of the books for us and send them to America. Eventually, now it's like they have hundreds upon hundreds of books for the public in the U.S. and abroad. But at that time, that didn't exist. And so I studied there. I got to the place where I kind of wanted a little bit more understanding of the background of yoga. And so I originally wanted to go to the Bihar school in India, and my mother said no. So I ended up going to Colorado and went to the Rocky Mountain Institute of Yoga and Ayurveda, where I studied midwifery. I studied yoga history. I studied Ayurveda. And so that had a different turn on it, because then I got deeply into Indian herbs and how those work with the body. Started to study Ayurveda, which is also kind of a part of yoga, if you want to call it that. And Ayurveda translates to the science of life. So it's connected to the body, the mind, the spirit, your environment, what you put in your body, also what is around you, how your environment affects your emotions. I also within that studied a little bit of midwifery, learned how to work with babies and mothers, and that's where my doula path kind of started. So I stayed there for a couple of years, and then I went to Los Angeles and I studied Kundalini yoga. And Kundalini yoga is a practice of really working with, it is a spiritual practice. So some yoga isn't necessarily seen as a spiritual practice. Some people practice it just from a physical standpoint, where Kundalini yoga is definitely a practice of connecting with the creator of all things. If you want to call the creator of all things God, or whatever title you use. But this practice is a little more kind of puts everything together. So it's the physical postures, you're working with your breath, you're working with mantras or sound, chanting, and you're also working with meditation, but it's kind of all happening at the same time, which is a unique practice. And so those are the three schools that I went to. And I ended up kind of being able to learn how to stream them together in a sense, because some of the practices are in each tradition and some of them are very, very different. So today I practice them all, but I'm more of I like meditation and breath work the most.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you a very profound question, but I'm going to wait until after we take this break to ask it.
Okay.
You've opened up several rabbit holes, and we'll visit them, maybe not in the depth that some might want, but we'll get to it when we get back. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is LaToya Kent. She is a full-time artist, musician, doula, and healer, and I'm going to add yogi to her title, or yogini, whatever is the proper term for the female iteration of someone who teaches. We'll be right back on 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton-Belcar Community Radio. Back in a minute.
Ohio, a new choice for Medicaid is here. Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield. The name you can trust because we're the plan that plans on everything, from 3 a.m. fevers to life-saving medicines. So choose Anthem for your Medicaid plan. Visit anthemohio.com today.
This was brought to you by Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united. Burton-Belcar Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson and the conversation with LaToya Kent. And she's been telling us about her yoga practice. So the question that I have for you, Miss LaToya, is how did yoga change your life?
Well, hmm, it has changed my life in different ways at different times. So I would say, um, at each different stage of life. So we have like our 20s, and then we have our 30s, and we have our 40s. I feel at each stage of life, it has shifted for me. Um, when I first started, I had what in yoga they call a monkey mind, which means that your mind kind of like attaches to a lot of different things. So it was hard for me to like sit and meditate well. It was like, okay, I would sit and try to meditate, and it was really hard for me to focus my mind. And so I really came to the practice. It was like a very kind of romantic thing, because once I kind of started to learn about it and started to practice, I got like really engulfed in it. I just really wanted to learn more, but it helped me um, through all of life's transitions. It helped me on an emotional level to have some balance. It helped me with how I connected to being on the planet. It helped me with having better discernment. It helped me with kindness, being able to put myself into other people's shoes, learning how to move a little bit slower. Um, when I had my son at home naturally, and that me having this deep practice for so long, when I was laboring, it helped me to really connect to what was happening. I did not have any medical intervention at all during my birth. I was able to use the breathing practices and the meditation, as well as the postures. Like I was able to sit in a posture to birth. I was able to really learn how to regulate my temperature, regulate my heartbeat, um, bring calm to my emotions. Um, Mothering yoga has helped me a lot. Anybody that has children, I'm sure you know that being a parent can be very challenging. So teaching my son some of those principles and using them for myself for balance and sanity. um, and then as I've gotten older, some of the practices that I thought weren't as exciting. When I was younger, I loved to like do handstands and headstands and all these like, moving my body in specific ways, that now I don't really engage in those practices anymore. But some of the practices that I call them a yoga tune-up, but working with the joints of the body. So the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, the ankles, the knees and the hips. My Satyananda Yoga has this practice called Pawan Muktasan, and it works with all of those parts that we don't seem to work with as much. Sometimes when we're exercising, we're thinking of the large muscles and not really thinking about the parts that connect everything together. So that practice has really helped me in a lot of different ways. I had a knee injury. I don't know what I did, but I wear a lot of platform shoes. So I think that something twisted and my knee was killing me to where I couldn't go up and down the steps. And everybody kept saying, well, you should go to the doctor. You should have them look at it. But I knew that I could work in healing my body on my own. And I did. So I used those practices to heal my body. I've always had like a little bit of weakness in my ankles. And so I've used those practices to heal those things as well. When I wake up in the morning, before I even get out of the bed, I'm working those joints before I even put my feet on the floor. And so it's almost like a toolbox of things that I can kind of delve into for any of the ailments that come with being a human being, whether it be physical, spiritual, mental, emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have just really laid on us some really profound things in terms of the abilities that we have as human beings. For instance, you said, I decided I didn't want to go to the doctor because you realized that you were the physician and you had the ability to heal yourself, and you describe yourself as a healer. When you talk about meditation, and this is one of the struggles that I have because I do meditate, but it's that whole idea of the monkey mind. You know,
Yes.
how do you do, or what do you do to eliminate those thoughts that just come from all those other places and quiet your mind in the meditative process?
So there is this one practice that I really love, and I teach it to children because I feel like it really helps them. There's a couple different ones. But one is where you're sitting and you focus your mind on one thing. So meditation is focusing your mind on one thing. One of the easiest ways to achieve a meditative state is to either focus on your breath. So you're allowing your mind to just focus on that one thing. So as you're breathing in, you're saying to yourself, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. And you just keep that repetition rolling in your mind. Your mind is then able to just focus on that one thing and not focus on anything else. Sometimes the mind will, in the middle of that, say, oh, what am I having for dinner? Or, oh, I had to wash clothes, or I have to go to this store. I have to call this person. And you come back to the breath. I am breathing in. I am breathing out. And it gets you to that place. Another thing, too, is that our brain is constantly sending signals all over the body. Every time we blink, every word we say, every time we move. And being able to not shut down the senses, but not engage the senses. So they say that when one sense is weak, like a person that is blind or a person that cannot hear, then they're heightened in other areas. So being able to close the eyes, not speak, not move the body, the brain is then moved to other areas. It doesn't have to engage into those activities. It doesn't have to engage into movement. And so it gives the mind and the brain a break when we're able to just focus it on one thing as opposed to it moving into all these other activities. There is a practice called yoga nidra, which is considered to be the conscious sleep. So you are allowing the body to rest, but the mind stays active or awake. And this practice has a profound effect, not just on the body, but also on the mind. It is considered a meditation practice, but you do a rotation through the body and you say each part of the body begins to relax, to sleep. But the mind is focused on what is being spoken. So if I say, right toe, big toe, second toe, third toe, and you take your time, your mind is only going to focus on that one thing. And so those two practices have helped me a lot. I didn't engage in them in that way when I was younger. I just kind of was like, oh, well, meditation means you just sit down and instantly you're in this place, but it does not happen that way for most people. It really is something that you have to practice. When I went to school in Boulder, I used to go to a place called the Shambhala Center, is like a Buddhist center, and they would do a practice called Zazen meditation. And usually Zazen is an hour, but it's kind of broken into two 30-minute sessions. And in those sessions, you are just sitting. It's quiet. There's no instruction. Nobody's talking to you, telling you to breathe or telling you to do anything. It's just complete silence and stillness. And I really like that practice too, because somehow the teacher or the guide who is present kind of sets the tone for the space. So that person has the ability to create that calm in the room, which then influences the other people that are present to kind of go into that space as well. That practice helped me to understand environment a lot better, to understand like there is an environment that needs to be created if you're teaching, and you as the teacher have the ability to influence the space by what you either put in the space or what you bring to the space. So the Zazen meditation really helped me to understand environment and how the energy or vibe of the teacher also has some feelers in the space to help facilitate that.
Those are some really great tips, so thank you for that, because I intend to implement some of what you just enunciated in my meditation process. I've also noticed that when I'm doing yoga, I kind of get into a meditative state, particularly when I go into child's pose. It's just, I get into that position and I get so comfortable. But the other part of it is my mind is wandering to things that need my attention in that day. But there is definitely a direct benefit that comes with closing your eyes and detaching yourself from electronic devices and so forth and so on. Meditation can be a powerful tool when it comes to manifestation.
Yes.
You said something else that really resonated with me when you were describing the birthing process and how you were able to avoid having to use some of the common medical procedures that come along with birthing. The idea that you were able to have control of your placenta, have control of the infant as it was being born, really provides a direct benefit to that child at the beginning of their life and later on in life. But I'm also curious about what impact it had in raising your child. It seems to me that you would be the type of parent that wouldn't need to pull out the belt because you needed to discipline your child. Can you talk to us about any benefit that came from the discipline that you have as a person who practices yoga?
That is so funny. And this is very strange because in the Black community, the belt is a thing, but I never had a whooping. And one of my bandmates from Mourning A BLKstar was laughing at me one time because everybody was talking about different stories. And I said, well, I've never had a whooping. And they were like, yeah, I can tell. But I did the timeout thing. I did the timeout thing. I did the talking thing. So very much like, okay, now why did you do that? Now, did you think that was okay? And that probably was a lot worse than anything else I could have done. I also talked to my son very young about the creator and creation and the universe and the effect of things that we do kind of circle back around to us, and making sure that you treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Oh, and so you hit him with the karma.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I tried to instill those things in him, but also allowing him to learn as well. I've never been like a helicopter parent where I'm like, oh, don't go over there, don't do that.
Right.
And so the way that he grew up, when I was a child, my grandmother had a lot of really nice things. She was very into brass.
Okay,
and
hold that thought, because we definitely want to hear about your grandmama, but we got to step away for a moment.
Okay.
So we'll be back in a few minutes. I'm having a conversation with LaToya Kent. She's telling us all about yoga and the benefit that it can provide for you. We'll continue our conversation right after this, right on 95.9 FM WOVU, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio. Back in a second.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
but she never told us don't touch things. It was just implied. And so when my son was little, I remember someone coming over and saying like, "Oh, well, you burn candles and you have incense burning, or you don't put this away," or, and he just had even as a small child, I didn't have to tell him don't touch this or don't touch that. It's like he knew anytime I brought something in the house, he was aware of it. I let him touch it. He could feel the weight. I didn't do bottles with him, or because I breastfed, but also I didn't do pacifiers. I didn't do a lot of things that traditionally people do. But I wanted him to learn how to self-soothe. I wanted him to learn like the weight of things, and to understand like I didn't do plastics. I only did glass and ceramics. I did some metal, like as far as like things to eat with and drink with. And so it helped him to understand like responsibility. And so I just didn't have, he didn't do a lot of things that I had to reprimand him on. Even now he's pretty level-headed. But one of the things that I did instill in him that I feel like was really helpful for him was I told him to not lie. And I said, the worst thing you can do is lie. Always tell me the truth. Always be honest. And so he always has been. He lied to me one time about something, and it was like he seemed like he was destroyed. But almost like he allowed himself to kind of punish himself. But I never had to whip him. I never did the spanking thing. His grandfather whooped him once, and he cried more than he got a whooping. But
Yeah. Well, when it comes to that, that whole idea of pulling out the belt and the whip and the switch and all that was learned behavior that we got from the enslavers.
I agree.
And we pass it down from generation to generation. And what's really interesting now is that we still have folks that are advocating spare the rod and spoil the child. And they're using a paradigm that perhaps has seen its best days and it's time to move forward. So that, as well as what you amplified with respect to birthing, you mentioned that you breastfed your child. Well, there are some circles that say that, when you breastfeed a child, they end up being more intelligent. And there's this whole idea of the chemicalization of milk that we feed our children, the synthetic vitamins and all those other kinds of things that they put in the milk that are more injurious than beneficial. So I just wish we could clone you so other children can get the direct benefit of the child rearing practices that you have been participating in. I don't want to get away from your creative life. So we've talked about yoga, and I could talk to you about Kundalini yoga and the existence of more than 7 chakras, because everybody thinks it's just 7. But there's a lot to know, and there's a lot to digest when it comes to yoga. But I also know that you are an artistic person as a musician. I witnessed you in the Blacks Museum at the East Cleveland Public Library in the piece that you did, I believe, about Lucille Clifton. Let's talk about LaToya, the artist. Which genre do you want to start with? Let's start with music. What was your connection with and the genesis of your being a musician?
So I always loved music. My grandfather and my uncles were very eclectic in their music taste. So I grew up listening to Grace Jones and Chick Corea and Billie Holiday, and my uncles were into like Kiss and Jimi Hendrix and Rolling Stones, and some of the things that some of the music that may not have been circulating in the Black community as much. I was able to connect with in the day of records and having, physical albums and being able to look at them and wow, this is so cool. My grandfather was a part of a singing bus drivers group called the Transiteers in Cleveland. So the RTA bus drivers union created a um, a band, and they would sing at all of the openings in the city. Anytime when they built the rapid stations, when they had things at the Cleveland Orchestra and Tower City, they did all of that kind of stuff. So my grandfather was the first person in my family who had like a physical record. Um, my music started in the church, as most people. My grandmother on my father's side and my grandfather were both pastors, and so I kind of was like forced into the singing part. But I was always very fascinated by words, and so my singing came out of being a writer. And I started writing when I was pretty young. I had a very voracious appetite for books and reading. I was constantly reading. I still sleep with books in my bed. But so my singing developed from wanting to work with words, and how through music, I could bend words and put them together and create my own styles. So my music has a lot of different styles. Um, it started more with like a rock, more of like a rock genre. Um, but because I listen to everything, it's kind of mixed in together. um, Traditional rock music and then like alternative rock music. I think right now they have my genre as electronic music, which I don't know exactly why it's electronic music, but it's like alternative electronic music, I think, is what some of my albums are under currently. So I started in Cleveland. My first band was around 90, the end of 93 going into 94. And I've been making music since then. Have had a bunch of different bands. Was also in a poetry group called Urban Guerrilla Poets in the 90s, mid to late 90s, and have been gracing stages since like late 93, doing music and or poetry. But both of them have been kind of like interconnected. Sometimes they're kind of the same thing for me, I guess. I think I write more poem style than I write traditional song style. So I don't do a verse, chorus, verse thing. I just, whatever comes, like downloads into me, that's that's how I create it. So I don't have this like these parameters of what a song is supposed to be.
Wow. Sounds like I need to have you at Larchmere Arts, but I don't know if I can afford you. Maybe we can work something out. You are performing with Mourning A BLKstar right now, and I don't know how I could describe that music because it kind of crosses genres. You know, I think there's always this idea that we have to put music in a box, and sometimes it's just music. But how would you describe the music of Mourning A BLKstar?
So we call our music genre non-conforming. When I say that we've played with every type of music you could think of, we've played with like full-on rock bands. We've played on the bill with soul music, rap artists, hip hop artists, blues, jazz. I mean, we're not stuck in this like thing of, oh, well, we're this kind of band, so then we can only play with these kinds of bands. We've played every type of show you can think of. And so the beauty in that is it doesn't pigeonhole us to a specific style. So we are an 8-piece, so we're able to bring all of our influences, because no two of us have exactly the same like type of music that we listen to or that we're interested in. So each person in the room is able to say, all right, this is what I bring. And the next person, this is what I bring. And it comes together and it becomes what we have, what we are, what we have. But it definitely does not have a genre, but it has elements of everything. And I like to wrap it back a tiny little bit. I love to chant the mantra Om, because Om is the sound of the universe. So it's everything. It's the birds. It's laughing. It's crying. It's water sounds and wind and everything. And so I feel like in this band, we have the ability to pull from all of the resources in the universe and put it into what we have. And so it doesn't, we can never say, nobody can ever say, we don't know where to put you. put us with anything and everything, and we can do it.
Yes.
So that the ability to do it that way is very freeing. And it definitely is connected to how I've always made my music. My music has always been kind of, a little bit different, but it has a lot of different elements connected to it.
So your bio indicates that you performed at the Kennedy Center and the Lincoln Center, and I've had some conversations with Dr. Will, and I think he also mentioned that you all went to Europe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you talk about your experience touring on the other side of the world?
So we've played, we did a choreo concert in Berlin with the Christoph Dance Company. And that was like our first introduction to being overseas. But we play Amsterdam, Rotterdam, like maybe six or more different places in Italy. We've played Brussels. We went to Australia at the top of this year and played with Lonnie Holly, who was, if you don't know who Lonnie Holly is, I can't even give you words. You just have to look him up. Amazing visual artist and amazing soul. Like, he feels like you're like making music with a shaman for real. But all of that project is improv. So we don't know what's going to happen when we get on stage. We've toured with him as well. But the one thing that I wish America could, or the States could shift, is how they treat their artists. Over there, they always feed you. So, and not just like, oh, they bring pizza, but like sometimes the promoters are making food for you. They sit down, they eat with you. It's catered. They spend the day with you. So usually sound check happens around some hours before the show, but usually they have you over there come a lot earlier. They meet you. They have a person that's connected to you throughout the time that you're there. They house you. So usually they make sure that their accommodations are good. And it just you feel more seen and more loved. Sometimes in the States you don't get food. Sometimes they don't make sure that you have housing. You have to pay for things in a very different way than you have to over there. So I would love eventually for that to kind of be the norm.
Yes.
Of how you are cared for. Right. The shows act.
Mm-hmm. And then most importantly, they pay you.
They pay you. Pay you, but they show up, and like it's not. It doesn't have this same culture. Like after you play, people say, "Hey," they shake your hand, or they buy some merch, and they go home. Like here, you're hanging out all night. We're
going to talk more about the Platter musicians when we get back, because we really need to talk about this. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. My conversation is with LaToya Kent, and as we just found out, she's an internationally touring musician. We're going to hear more about that when we get back. This is 95.9 FM, WOVU, Burton-Belcar Community Radio.
Koshin Meats is a family-owned business that has served the Cleveland area for over a century. Their staff can help you select specialty cuts of beef, poultry, pork, and other items you may not find in an ordinary grocery store like frog legs or wild jerky. They also offer a wide variety of breads, deli meats, cheeses, spices, and other specialty products. Conveniently located at 4058 St. Clair Avenue near East 41st Street, Koshin Meats is the place to go for all your cuisine needs. Call 216 881-7677 for more info or visit KoshinMeats.com. This message was brought to you by Koshin Meats and Marketplace and WOVU 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
Hi, this is Deborah Dahlman from the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, and you're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. I'm sitting here listening to her stories and the European tour and all the way over in Australia and the folks that hire them, feeding them, spending time with them. Can we make this happen in Cleveland? I'm going to be optimistic and say perhaps we can change the game. But, you know, the current state of things is that now it's like people think $100 to do a gig is a great payday. We do gigs sometimes and we don't even get water from the folks who hired us to play. You know, it's really, it's appalling, you know, that the things that need to happen in order for musicians and artists in general to be respected to the extent that they should be, because I'm of the thought that the creatives are actually the healers, not the doctors, not the police officers, perhaps to a certain extent the teachers that are able to reach their students without the encumbrances of curricula and all those other things. But artists are really the folks who are carrying the ball when it comes to instigating change in our world. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree. I think that if you think of what people flock to, so if you're sad, you listen to music. If you're happy, you listen to music. If you're making love, like the way that you make it romantic is with the music. I think that we pay more for art than we pay for anything. I think the only thing that might rival how much we pay for art is hospital bills, for real. Mm-hmm. But music has this ability to touch us. It's that feeling of when you listen to a certain piece of music and it makes the hair stand up on your skin, and it can completely create a mood for you emotionally, and also has the ability to heal. And not just I want to say, like, as my son was growing up, I started listening to what they call like binaural rhythms. And these sound frequencies actually have the ability to heal our bodies. And so some of our traditional music has some of these sounds and connected to it. But I had started listening to some of the binaural rhythms in the night and noticing the difference in my mood when I would wake up. And some of them are like binaural rhythms for toothache, binaural rhythms for birthing. They call it hypnobirthing, where you listen to sounds as you're going through birth and it helps you to deliver. And I've witnessed that, and it really does work. But music has the ability to heal on so many levels, not just like that type of music, but drumming and singing and string instruments and wind instruments. And we're on this planet, like really trying to, you know, do what's really connected to our souls. And as brown people on the planet, our history is connected, and our family and the way we were raised is connected in music. I was saying on one thing how when I was a kid, I knew it was time to clean up because my grandmother would put on the Mahalia Jackson or she would put on Aretha Franklin. And that meant, some of them meant it was Sunday, you know, that meant it was time to go to church. And then some of the music meant that it was time to clean. And you knew the difference between the cleaning music and the difference between the it's time to go to church music, and the difference between, all right, my mother's friends are coming over to hang out, you got to go in your room kind of music. So music is very like a part of our foundation. We understand things from the standpoint of how music enters into our lives. I don't know too many people. I've never met a person that said they didn't like music. I mean, everything is rhythm, right?
Yes. Well, I happen to know a person who's very much into jazz, and for whatever reason, this person does not like vocals. Maybe it's because of the impact that the words have on their mind or their mood or their experiences or whatever. But no, I can't say that I've ever met anyone that said that they didn't like music. One of your collaborators is R.A. Washington, another former guest on this show. Talk to us about your relationship with Mr. Washington.
So we met each other in high school. He said that he claims that I used to ignore him in high school, but it's not true. But we both went to Cleveland Heights High School, which was it was almost like going to an art school. Like a lot of the people who we went to school with are now all different types of artists. They make films, and some of them are poets, and some of them are tattoo artists and visual artists. But we always were connected through, our one of our mutual friends. His name was Dwayne Piget. He was killed in Cleveland, but he was an amazing artist. Was both of our
Yes,
best.
Gork, the band psychologist.
Yes, Gork, the band psychologist. And so just being a black weirdo in the Cleveland scene, you're definitely connected. And so the three of us were very, very connected from all the way from back then. And I moved away for a while, came back, and we started working with making music together. Probably around 2007, 6 or 7, and created Cleveland Tapes. Cleveland Tapes was already in the works with him, but we started to really band together and create music together, and that led into one of my solo projects with him called Sweet Oil, and then that eventually moved into Mourning A BLKstar.
Okay, so that was really the genesis of the creation of that group.
Yeah, so what happened, so the story goes that we made this album Sweet Oil together. It was a beautiful project, but all of my music was like girly punk, like fast, like very like I don't know if you're familiar with the Riot Girl movement, but it was like a time in music where all of the like girls were singing like punk music, so like Sonic Youth and Babes in Toyland, and just to name a few. And my music was very like fast, and a couple of lyrics like repeated, and he was like, I want you to do something different. I would like to see you do something different. And I was like, okay. And so we went into the studio, and we created this album called Sweet Oil, and then we started kind of talking about maybe doing something else. And I'm like, well, whatever you want to do, I'm down for it. We were going to this studio called Zombie Proof, and like all of our friends in the city, every weekend somebody was recording an album. So you can just drop in, somebody's recording, you might get on the track, or you might, just be part of the atmosphere in the back. And he's like, oh, I got some space, and people would just pay for the space. It was really inexpensive, like $100 a day. And you can go and make an album in a day. And that was kind of how things were going. Like, he was making a lot of music, and I was making a lot of music. And so he's like, oh, well, let's get together and make some music. And so he had all these sheets of the things that he written down, and he used a typewriter. And I was like, I don't sing other people's lyrics. And he was like, no, it's fine. And I said, you are the only person who I will ever sing their lyrics. And to this date, I'm very serious. I do not sing other people's lyrics. I just would not do it. And so we got into the studio, and we started recording what became the first Mourning A BLKstar album. And it was just he, myself, and James Longs, who was also one of the lead singers. And then everybody else kind of like, we decided that it was going to be a group. Or he called me and was like, you want to just be a group? And I was like, sure. And then it evolved to where it is now. But that was the humble beginnings. It was just a $100 session, and we did the whole album in probably like, I don't know, 3-4 hours, or maybe a little bit longer.
What was the thought behind the title of your band?
So around that time, David Bowie passed. His last album was called Black Star. And Fife Dog from Tribe Called Quest passed away. Prince had recently passed away. I know I'm forgetting somebody.
Michael Jackson.
But mainly those three were like the thing. And so and also Gork passed. And we always, the two of us always felt like Gork was going to always be a part of everything we did musically, because he always was. I mean, all the way back from very beginnings, he was good at just showing up and freestyling. And he would blow up any poetry spot, he would come and he's so creative. And so we were talking about mourning and being in mourning and what that meant. And people just kept passing away. And we're like, oh my God, like, okay. And another person, Prince, what? And then, and in the middle of that fight, it was like really, really powerful. And then, so the mourning, and then connected with the Black Star from David Bowie. And then it became Mourning A BLKstar. And I remember him calling me saying, after we decided it was going to be a group, and he was like, oh, Mourning A BLKstar. And I was like, yes. And then he went and got our logo tattooed on his hand. And he was like, this band has to make it because I tattooed this on my hand. And we just still going very, very, very strong.
Well, yeah, international tours and the Lincoln Center and Kennedy Center and all these other things. I'm just blown away by the success that you've had. And it just goes to illustrate the point that the level of talent that we have in this city.
Oh,
we're so blessed on so many levels. And I think, folks kind of take artists for granted in ways. But again, just getting back to the whole idea of the value that we have as folks in this community, we just have to keep doing what we do. Some people complain, well, all this music on the radio is trash and all that. Well, if you don't like the music that you're hearing on the radio, write your own. And the other thing I want to do is applaud you for refusing to do cover tunes.
Oh yeah, you.
It's like, can I write something that can resonate with you? Is it a requirement that what I play sounds exactly like a record that you've heard 1,000 times? It's time for folks to embrace the creativity of folks that they know. We just have a few moments left in the show. Is there anything that you want to amplify in terms of projects that you're working on or tours that you're going to be doing with Mourning A BLKstar before we get out of here and give folks a way that they can connect with you if they'd like to take advantage of what you do as someone who practices yoga or mindfulness?
So I would say there's some things that I have in the works. I'm off of social media. I'm off of Instagram. Mourning A BLKstar does have an Instagram and a website. So everything is Mourning A BLKstar. We're on Facebook as well. I am looking forward to working with some more institutions teaching meditation. The past year I worked with MOCA and Cleveland Museum of Art, so wanting to do a little bit more of that. I've been a little bit in hibernation from doing some of my classes, but I was doing classes steadily and work moving back into doing more classes, as well as continuing to travel. Okay. I don't want to let the cat out the bag, but maybe I can come back on again because we have a collaboration that is going to be revealed, I think, this week, but I can't say it yet.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that when the time is right. LaToya, I want to thank you for joining me on Open Door.
Thank you.
All right, and to our listening audience, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your best day. Peace.